Josh Duggar's legal team is redoubling their efforts to overturn the conviction in his child pornography case, which was handed down last month. The defense team representing Josh has asked for more time to submit an appeal, as we previously said. The deadline for their motion was January 19th, and it has now been received. So, what are the goals of the legal team and what are the arguments they are making regarding Josh's trial? The former TLC star Josh Duggar was arrested in April 2021, in case you haven't been following the story. On November 30th, his trial commenced. The son of Duggar was found guilty by a unanimous jury at the conclusion of the trial. In addition to fines totaling hundreds of thousands of dollars, he faces decades in prison. Josh was placed into the Arkansas-Washington County Detention Center after the trial concluded. After his sentencing, which is scheduled for a few months from now, he will be sent to a federal prison. But Josh Duggar's lawyers are trying to overturn this decision. In an effort to alter Josh's destiny, they have moved forward with the plan. This Monday, the legal team representing Josh Duggar submitted a motion seeking either an acquittal or a fresh trial. Included in the motion are the following terms on which the team is hoping to achieve an acquittal. The process is ongoing. Even when seen in the most favorable light, the evidence presented during the trial does not constitute sufficient grounds for a conviction on either count. Government evidence suggesting Duggar knew that the visual depictions were of a minor engaging in sexually explicit conduct was lacking. The jury had no evidence that Duggar personally viewed any specific portion of any of the files allegedly found on the computer. Josh Duggar's defense team adds in the request. According to Josh's group, a miscarriage of justice may have occurred, which might lead to the verdict being reversed. Trial errors and any other circumstance that might render the trial essentially unfair, including the sufficiency of the evidence, are within the court's broad discretion to grant relief, the request states. Josh Duggar's legal team is seeking a fresh trial in the event that acquittal cannot be achieved. This is due to the fact that the defendant failed to timely disclose exculpatory evidence. Emails and texts from Caleb Williams are included in the motion. At the dealership, he collaborated with Josh. The evidence that was presented in the motion, however, was unavailable during the trial. Nonetheless, Caleb was present at the dealership and had computer access during certain relevant time periods, as mentioned in the motion. What happens next is something we can only speculate about at this point in time. What will happen to the eldest Duggar boy next is anyone's guess, but we should know more shortly. Josh Duggar's ex-star of TLC's 19 Kids and Counting legal drama has captivated millions of viewers due to the gravity of the accusations against him and the protracted course of his defense. After her December 2021 conviction for receiving and possessing child pornography, Duggar was subject to intense scrutiny from both the public and the legal system. A recent appeal by his legal team seeks his acquittal on the grounds that the jury was unfairly convicted due to what they perceive as multiple mistakes made during the trial. A lot of moral, ethical, and legal questions are at play in Josh Duggar's situation. People are talking about his conviction in all sorts of places, from the legal ramifications of the case to how the public views the Duggar family in general. There were major mistakes that affected the fairness of the trial, according to Duggar's defense team. If the defense asks for an acquittal, the Duggar family might be further embroiled in the judicial system for a long time. What does this mean for Josh Duggar's legal battle moving forward? We'll take a look at the defense's arguments, the trial's alleged mistakes, and more in this article. We will also look at the public's reaction to these changes and the possible consequences. The trial and conviction of Josh Duggar. The allegations and lawsuit. Josh Duggar was found guilty on 2 counts in December 2021 following a public trial that had lasted for weeks. 1 count for receiving child pornography and 1 count for possessing it. The allegations against Duggar originated from a 2019 probe that uncovered sexually obscene photos of children on his dealership computer. The prosecution and defense presented evidence on the explicit materials found on Duggar's devices during his trial, which followed his arrest in April 2021. Duggar was subsequently found guilty. Forensic evidence and the testimony of digital specialists who described the photographs as access to and storage on Duggar's computer were key components of the prosecution's compelling case during the trial. An in-depth examination of Duggar's internet behavior was utilized to create a chronology of the picture downloads and viewings, which was one of the main pieces of evidence offered. The prosecution's case established beyond a reasonable doubt that Duggar was involved with child pornography, which resulted in his conviction. Even though there was a mountain of evidence linking Duggar to the photo download, his legal team maintained that it wasn't strong enough to convict him. There was no concrete proof connecting Duggar to the offenses, and they implied that someone else might have downloaded the illegal material on his computers. Additionally, they made an effort to cast doubt on the digital evidence by claiming the prosecution's experts were unreliable or had made mistakes in their analysis. Duggar yet faced a long prison term after being found guilty despite these grounds. Nevertheless, his legal team has persisted in arguing that the verdict was flawed and calls for a new trial or an acquittal. An appeal by the defense for not guilt. The defense team representing Josh Duggar appealed his conviction in early 2022, arguing that the trial court had made mistakes that violated Duggar's right to a fair trial and so should be acquitted. The defense argues, among other things, that the prosecution erred in its use of particular evidence and that the judge made some incorrect rulings during the trial. Mistakes made by the trial judge and the jury. The defense has asked for the acquittal on the grounds that the jury instructions were mishandled, among other things. The defense team representing Duggar claims that the jury may have relied on inaccurate or irrelevant evidence because the judge did not adequately teach them on how to evaluate specific pieces of evidence. An essential aspect of the judicial process, jury instructions train the members of the jury on how to evaluate the evidence and apply the law to the specifics of the case. Jurors, according to the defense, were misinformed about how to assess digital forensic evidence and were swayed too much by emotional evidence. A biased and unfair ruling, they contend, resulted from this. A number of mistakes were made in the presentation of evidence, according to the defense, and some irrelevant documents were even admitted. 2. Data from digital sources and opinions from experts. The defense also heavily relies on the idea that the digital evidence presented during the trial was faulty. Although forensic specialists testified on behalf of the prosecution regarding the sexually explicit material discovered on Duggar's devices, the defense contends that this evidence was insufficient to establish Duggar's guilt with certainty. The defense argues that the prosecution's digital specialists may have made mistakes or neglected to follow protocol when working with the material, leading to a potentially flawed or incomplete analysis. Their main point is that the jury's decision to find Duggar guilty was based on faulty evidence and testimony since there wasn't enough specific evidence connecting him to the unlawful photographs. A hack, or other type of outside meddling, is another issue that the defense has brought up. Legal counsel for Duggar has raised the possibility that an unauthorized third party copied the pornographic content onto his devices. They have petitioned the court to reevaluate the case against Duggar, arguing that he may have been framed or that outside influences corrupted the evidence. Thirdly, journalism and public opinion bias. The defense also brought up the possibility that public opinion and media coverage impacted the trial's fairness as an issue in their motion for acquittal. Because of his notoriety as a Duggar family member and the contentious character of the accusations against him, Josh Duggar's case garnered substantial media coverage. The defense contends that the jury was unable to reach a fair verdict due to the biased atmosphere fostered by the extensive media coverage of the case. Specifically, the Duggar legal team has brought up the extensive negative press surrounding the Duggar family, particularly in light of Josh Duggar's history of problems, such as his confession to assaulting his sisters as adolescents. It was difficult for Duggar to have a fair trial, according to his defense, because of the media's ingrained prejudice against him. How people reacted and what role did the Duggar family play? Both the legal system and the public eye have been captivated by Josh Duggar's case. Throughout Josh's trial and conviction, the Duggar family, and notably his parents, Jim Bob and Michelle Duggar, have been quite outspoken in their support of their son. Since the charges are so serious and the family has a history of scandals, their public pronouncements have frequently been met with criticism.